Hello, everyone, and welcome to UBS Trending. I'm Anthony Pastori. Every March, we celebrate Women's History Month, an annual declared month that highlights the contributions of women to events in history and contemporary society. And in March, and as well as the rest of the year, we are reminded that half of women leave big financial decisions to their spouse or their partner, and that's according to a recent UBS survey. So how can women take control of their own finances and change that dynamic? So we're going to talk about that right now with Bree Williams. Bree, of course, is from State Street Global Advisors and the head of practice management and a friend of ours here at UBS. So Bree, nice to have you join us. Thanks for being here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Sure thing, Bree. We're going to get into a little bit more of the conversation when it comes to women and their finances, but I wanted to talk to you about Fearless Girl. And for those who are not familiar with who she is a statue that has been circulating throughout New York City for the last 5 years, and now she is, at least for the next 3 years or so, standing in front of the New York Stock Exchange. And I know you'll tell us a little bit more about her history and what the significance is, but what impact have you seen, Bree, and what does staying fearless mean to you?
Great questions, Anthony, and I'm going to turn the tables on you as well, getting to the question of what does stay fearless mean. So when we just take a step back and think about Fearless Girl, it is her 5th year anniversary. She gave a physical form to an elusive problem and overnight became a contemporary symbol for the age-old challenge of diversity, women in leadership, and the impact that women can have. And we saw her resonate, over these past 5 years so deeply, and she really ignited a global conversation about the power of women in leadership. And when I think back across these 5 years, honestly, Anthony, the overwhelming support that she receives, the response globally, it's exceeded our expectations. And the attention surrounding her has given us a tremendous platform for our asset stewardship commitment. When I talk about asset stewardship, that's really our responsibility as a company to engage with companies, use our voice, use our vote to impact change with the companies that we work with. And through our asset stewardship program, we've been able to influence enhancements to diversity at the board level. Let me give you some data points because you're looking for the evidence. Since 2017, we identified 1,548 companies without having a woman on their board. And since then, now 948 of those companies have added a woman director. Certainly proud of that progress, but there's much more work to be done here.
Yeah, absolutely. There has been a lot of progress, clearly, since when you and I were first talking about this issue a few years ago, and certainly since we began our Own Your Worth campaign here in UBS, led by my colleague Carrie Shuffman. So many of our viewers are very familiar with Carrie and the initiatives that she and her team have. I wanted to just kind of expand on that a little bit, because there has been a lot of recognition, as we're talking about this inequality that exists, particularly in corporate America, in, as you were talking about, leadership positions, as well as overall compensation. So we have seen that there's been progress, but has it been meaningful to you? And do you think there's been enough done?
So let's take the positive first. I'm very encouraged by the progress and the growth. Countless women challenge conventional thinking, whether we're talking about corporate boardroom, the Fortune 500 companies, and the highest levels of government. And we should take a moment to reflect on those factors that contribute to the growth thus far. Let's use financial services as our example. Here, we can look to factors that help create the change and progress that we see. There are many, but just to highlight a few: more intentional recruitment, innovation in how we retain women, supportive reentry programs, mentorship, sponsorship, stronger peer networks. Despite that progress, as I said earlier, there is much more for us to do here. Progress is never as swift or as evenly distributed as we would wish to see. And we do acknowledge that there are good intentions in the marketplace. Most companies are actively committed to increasing diversity, especially when it comes to promoting women and minorities into senior leadership roles. But that can be harder to do when you have a pool of candidates among women and minorities that's smaller to begin with. I think financial services is certainly an industry that has been challenged with finding women and minorities to move into the not only the fields, but to move them up the pipeline. So we can do better here by challenging ourselves into where we look for our next best talent. This is important work. And if we want to make the change possible, we have to be the change agent. So we have to use our voice. There's power in putting that to work. And more importantly, we have to follow through. So Anthony, that brings me back to the question you had asked me up front that I skipped, which is, what does it mean to be fearless? For you, what does it mean to stay fearless when you hear that?
Yeah, and I think it kind of it dips into what we're talking about. There's so much of our history that shows we kind of repeat the same things over and over and over again. I think being fearless means kind of taking what you know as normal or normal in your own life or your own experience and changing that to make it better for you, make it better for the people around you, and not being afraid to do so, because change can be really scary. But I think that's what being fearless means to me.
Yeah, well, there's a reason you and I are friends, because we think a little bit similarly on that note. Because when I think about stay fearless and what does it mean to me, it's a reminder, I think, to continue to pay it forward. When I look back, I can really be thankful for the many special colleagues that I now stand on their shoulders, because they provided the wisdom, the constructive feedback, and so generously offered it over the years, whether I wanted to hear it or not. And when you look back, and with the benefit of that hindsight, you can see how having that constructive criticism, earning the hard-earned praise, and the reality can really shape where a career can go. So we all have the opportunity to show others how to blaze that trail, to lift each other up, pull others into this space, give them the support, the guidance, and the sponsorship that's necessary for them to fearlessly move forward. Now, I would say that that's a good advice for the office, but it's also great advice for life. So to all our women investors out there, if you're not already engaged, now's the time to own your worth. Make sure you invest in a future you, because you want your money to work as hard as you do, so you can have the financial security that you want on this living well and living long term.
Absolutely. And by the way, that wasn't even rehearsed. So there is a clear reason why you and I are very like-minded, Bria, and have very deep conversations about this off camera. So I'm glad you asked me the question. But kind of piggybacking about a bit on what you talked about there, and as you know, at UBS, we call the Women Empowerment Series "Own Your Worth." But there's been a lot of research. One of our recent surveys found that 7 in 10 men actually take the lead on their long-term financial decisions in a male-female relationship, marriage, or partnership. But among the men who take the lead, 9 in 10 wish that their spouse was actually more involved. So why do you think it is that women have not received as much attention as men when it comes to getting financial advice?
I think it's an interesting, almost provocative question. So if we just think about the demographics and the interest in target client segments, women are a segment. They're a very valuable demographic. We just think about all the progress we talked about, the economic force and influence. We matter. However, we are often over-researched, yet underserved. Or if we are served, it's at surface level at best. So when you think about the sheer size and influence and power that women have at 51% of the population, definitely not a niche segment, and definitely there is no one woman. So not only are there some differences, in how financial planning and approach to an investment management exists between the genders, there are differences within the gender. So I think an interesting way to look at the question you asked, Anthony, is to think about it from a viewpoint that we can all relate to: marketing. We're marketed every day across every medium with lots of messages. So if we stay focused on financial services and think about those messages, here we can begin to see where the disconnect can come into play. I think if we look at the message of how money and wealth is viewed, it's a great one for us to focus on. So when I think about, on the one hand, an ad message that communicates, I seek to accumulate money. And then on the other hand, another ad message that's communicating, I see money as a way to care for my family, improve my life, find security. That's two very different representations of one's relationship with money. So, Anthony, which ad message do you think is going to relate better, make a stronger connection with the client segment that's values-based as an investor?
What do I think? I mean, I feel like by honestly, having conversations like this, Bree, where we're shedding light on a lot of the results of these surveys where you actually dig in and ask people the questions about what it means to be involved in their own financial life, and you see the disparities between men and women, I think that's a really important part of how we can move the needle even more.
Definitely. So, performance matters, returns matter. They're the engine behind what makes your financial plan possible. But when you think about some of the motivations, one's purpose for investing, that's when you start to see some of those differences in the relationship with money. So if you want to be connecting successfully and more importantly, retaining and engaging a female investor as part of your business, as an advisor, you have to recognize what really is driving and influencing the priorities in one's life. So when the views on money and the relationship with wealth, yes, the performance is a factor, but you now have to go deeper and look at what's driving, what's the primary goal. And when you look at some of the data that UBS has, that we have in other industry sources, you can see that what's a driver would be, will I have the ability to fund all the healthcare needs that I will need later in my life? There's also, maintaining current lifestyle. I want to retire on my terms and in the style that I'm currently accustomed to. Those are achieving desired financial outcomes. And those are priorities over investment performance alone. So if we do a better job demonstrating that we can understand not only the multidimensional journey that a woman takes, but clearly resonate that she's got different needs, that she has preferences and behaviors that are distinct in how she manages her finance, I think we're in a better position to close the gap and step up in the way that women expect and deserve to be served.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I think there's an expectation that when anyone, male or female, sits down with a financial advisor, they're expected to know exactly what mutual fund they want to invest in, or some kind of a stock, or some municipal bond. But if the advisor is asking the right questions, as you pointed out, what are your goals for life? When would you like to retire? If you have kids, what schools do you think they would like to go to, and how would you like to help them as they become young adults? So those are the questions that will help get to, okay, how should my portfolio be? So hopefully we can take that fear also out of someone sitting with an advisor for the first time who feels, I don't know exactly how to answer those types of questions. So it's an ongoing conversation, Bree, and thankfully we have them here, and we have folks like you who can help us break these down. We're getting close to the end of our conversation, but I wanted to ask you quickly, we've been talking a lot about the pandemic, but there's been certainly a specific impact that it's had on women, and not only women in their personal lives, but also female business owners. What have you seen as far as the impact of the pandemic there?
Sure. So looking back, there are a lot of lessons that the pandemic brought with it. Specifically, when you think about the pandemic recession, it did disproportionately affect women who have been bearing the brunt of the economic and social fallout of COVID-19. The economic data paints that picture for us. So in advanced economies like the US, we see women withdrawing from the labor force in greater numbers than their male colleagues. To be specific, in just a 12-month period, 2.4 million women left the US labor force versus 1.8 million men. And that comes at a time in our history when more women than men were in the workforce. When you think about a change like that and something of that significance, that's going to have negative consequences, and it's twofold. So negative consequences on our women investors impacts pay equity, it impacts financial wellness, impacts financial security. It also impacts our global economy just based on the contributions and participation of women in society. So that's going to have a negative impact on long-term growth. Now, that said, women aren't the only ones carrying the burden here. Everyone has suffered and faced some really unprecedented challenges over the last 2 years. We've seen the rise in unpaid care, the remote schooling, the domestic work, and that combination of forces really put a lot of women in positions that were challenging. Tough calls were made about jobs and families in order to get what was important done. So the value of objective advice should really shine in a moment like this, because now is the time to really be helping women own their worth, address the risks in retirement and security, and take back some of that empowerment that might have been lost during the pandemic.
Bree, yeah, thank you. Listen, I'm so appreciative of the partnership that UBS has with State Street Global Advisors. You all are so incredible when it comes to the data that you have, and I know you've done a lot of in-person events pre-pandemic with our own Carrie Shuffman, talking about Own Your Worth, talking about women and their financial wealth and ownership. So thanks again for joining us. We'd love to have you back. So let's get you back again soon. And thanks for being here, Bree.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Great. And for more information, you can visit our website at ubs.com/views. Lots of content there related to this topic and many more. And you can follow us on social media. There's LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Plus, you can check out all of our past UBS Trending episodes on demand on our website, ubs.com/studios, as well as the UBS YouTube channel. And as always, if you have any questions about your portfolio, make sure to speak with a financial advisor. Until next time, I'm Anthony Pastore. We hope you have a great day. And remember to keep your eyes on what's trending. We will see you soon.